Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. We start as we always do, first and foremost, by praising and thanking Allah and asking Him to bless and protect our final prophet and messenger, Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome to our 27th section where we are talking about having a heart-to-heart with the Quran. In the 27th juz of the Quran, again, we're getting into more and more surahs per juz because the surahs are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. We continue from what started in the 26th juz, Surah Al-Dhariyat, Surah number 51. And it continues all the way up until Surah Al-Hadid, Surah number 57. Today, we're going to be talking about a very beautiful, powerful, scary almost section from Surah Al-Hadid that talks about our hearts. That is a real heart-to-heart. This is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Hadid, Surah number 57, ayah number 16 and 17. أَلَمْ يَأْنِنِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَمَا نَزَلَ مِنَ الْحَقِّ وَلَا يَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ مِنْ قَبْلِ فَطَالَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْأَمَدُ فَقَسَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ وَكَثِيرٌ مِّنْهُمْ فَاسِقُونَ اعلموا أن الله يحيي الأرض بعد موتها قد بينا لكم الآيات لعلكم تعقلون. Allah, He asks a tough rhetorical question. Isn't it time yet for those who believe that their hearts are humble and submissive, wanting to remember Allah because of the reminder of Allah, i.e. from the truth that was revealed, the Quran? So they shouldn't be like those who were given the book. They were given the Torah, they were given the Gospels before. And a long time passed, and their hearts became hard like rocks. All the while, most of them were engrossed in crossing the boundaries of Allah. No, don't forget that it is actually Allah who gives the earth life after it was dead. We have already given and explained the signs to all of you so that you think. As we'll see, Surah Al-Hadid is a major wake-up call for the believers, and these ayat are directed towards Muslims, not non-Muslims. They're directed towards believers. And so Allah, He's very direct here. أَلَمْ يَأْنِنِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Isn't it time? Hasn't the time already come for the believers? It's not the time is soon. The time already passed. The time already came. This is used to express an urgency, a missed deadline. Wasn't it already time? As if to push, you're late. You're late to this. But what are we late for? What deadline did I miss? What deadline did we miss? What deadline did I, a believer, a Muslim, a mu'min, miss? Is there something I forgot to do? Something I did late? And how is this addressed to the believers? What did we miss? Allah informs us of the deadline we missed. أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Why haven't the hearts of the believers humbly submitted to the reminder of Allah? The question being asked is, why don't their hearts have khushu'? Why aren't their hearts filled with awe, humility, softness, submission, and obedience? The term khushu' encompasses all of these things. It forces us to think about our hearts. How hard, how stiff, impenetrable is my heart, that it can't feel soft, it can't humble itself. A heart with khushu' would be a heart that immediately would love the Quran, humble itself to the Quran, submit to every word Allah sent down in His divine book. A heart with khushu' lowers its own voice, lowers its ego, lowers its pride, lowers its opinions, and wholeheartedly accepts and submits to the superiority, the greatness, the divinity of the Quran. All of that magnificence, humility, submission leads to obedience. It leads to obedience. Obedience to the book, obedience to the one who sent the book. A heart that has khushu' is a heart that knows it must obey Allah and not the other way around. A heart that has khushu' is a heart that knows it must obey what has come in the Quran, not the other way around. The Quran does not submit to my whims, my desires. This book is not here to justify my actions. I need to fix my actions to be in line with what Allah has sent down in this book. And I need to push myself, press myself. Why doesn't my heart just melt when I read and listen to the Quran? Why isn't my heart breaking apart because of the Quran? Why isn't my first instinct, like we talked about yesterday, I must submit? This can only be the truth that I have to submit to. And what makes this even heavier is that this is being told to the Muslims, not the non-Muslims, not the disbelievers, not the kuffar. What has happened to my faith, my iman, my level of faith and conviction? That my heart, that my body, that my soul just doesn't fall to the floor out of humility and subservience and submission to Allah. And Allah, He says, أن تخشع قلوبهم لذكر الله. The reminder of Allah, the mention of Allah, the praise of Allah, the remembrance of Allah. Heart should soften and submit to, for, at the utterance of, upon hearing anything from or about Allah. Even when we hear the name Allah, we humble ourselves. We humble ourselves, like was mentioned a few sessions ago, that the believers, إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُم, that when the mere mention of Allah is done, when someone hears the name of Allah, their hearts, they just start to tremble and shake. And so our hearts, the same way, when Allah is mentioned, when we are reminded about Allah, we just fall. We just become humble. We can't, our bodies are overwhelmed. When we mention Him, our hearts soften. When we read or listen to the reminders given to us by Allah, we obey. We're being asked this because this is what our hearts and souls are naturally inclined to do. This is what they want to do. Our hearts, our souls are wanting, willing, ready, hoping to submit. Our hearts, our souls were created to love and desire the dhikr of Allah, the mention of Allah, the praise, remembrance, gratitude of Allah. Our hearts want to submit. They want to remember Allah. But we put wall after wall after wall. We make our hearts submit to money, to power, to fame, to ego, to stinginess, to rebelliousness, to ingratitude, to selfishness, to being ungrateful, to being uncontent, to being rude and mean and crude and harsh-hearted and obstinate, stubborn, disobedient. We push our hearts to do this because we've been deluded by this world, but our hearts and souls, all they want to do is do the dhikr of Allah. So if we piece everything we've kind of done up to now, we get believers. You should already have hearts that soften and fall in awe at the mention of Allah and humbly submit to whatever Allah has said. Your heart should already be immersed in the dhikr of Allah. It should have already happened. And then Allah, He elaborates what is dhikrullah. أن تخشع قلوبهم لذكر الله وما نزل من الحق. Allah clarifies what He means by the reminder of Allah, dhikr of Allah, by saying وَمَا نَزَلَ مِنَ الْحَقِّ, aka what has been sent down in terms of truth. This wow doesn't mean and, the وَمَا نَزَلَ doesn't mean and, but it's here to clarify and explain, like aka is used. And truth here can refer to all revelation from Allah, or the Quran in particular. But the point being, anything worthy of being remembered, given time to, is conducive to us Muslims humbly submitting to Allah and His commands and His reminders. And the Quran is the hallmark, pinnacle, exemplar remembrance of Allah. It is the dhikr of Allah. It is the remembrance of Allah. It is the reminder of Allah. It is the best words for us to recite and listen, to remember Allah. And it's also the greatest reminder Allah has given us. It is the guidebook, the instruction manual, the map, the most clear guidance that is available to us. Again, if we kind of piece everything together, because this is broken up, but it really builds up. Hasn't the time already come that the hearts of believers should be in such awe, humility, and submissiveness because of the Quran? Shouldn't their hearts, my heart, your heart, be pouring out, our eyes flooded with tears, because we are yearning to have a relationship with the Quran? Why isn't there burning desire, heartfelt yearning, an unending longing for the Quran? Why doesn't it exist in me? Why haven't I yet connected to the Quran, fallen in love with the Quran, humbled myself to the Quran, submitted wholeheartedly to the Quran? Isn't it time yet that you, yes you, O believer, took the Quran seriously? Isn't it time that you took the Quran seriously? What's the consequence of not doing that? وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ مِنْ قَبْلِ فَطَالَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْأَمَدُ فَقَسَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ وَكَثِيرٌ مِّنْهُمْ فَاسِقُونَ. Allah then warns us, reminds us about the fate of those whose hearts failed to humbly submit. There was no khushu' in their hearts for the true reminder of Allah. وَلَا تَكُونُوا. They better not become like those who were given the book previously, but after a long time had passed, their hearts became hard. وَكَثِيرٌ مِّنْهُمْ فَاسِقُونَ. All the while, most of them were transgressing the laws of Allah. The Jews and Christians also had access to truth, also had access to dhikr of Allah, the reminders of Allah, but their hearts, instead of humbly submitting, became hard. They didn't foster that relationship, they didn't connect with, they didn't follow the reminders Allah gave to them. All of this is because many of them chose to disobey. They trained their hearts, they nurtured, fed, raised their hearts on everything but Allah, everything but the reminder of Allah. They fed it, they fed it, they fed it. The filth, the garbage of materialism and individualism and instant gratification, the poisons of this world. And so their hearts became hard. They trained their hearts, their ears to ignore the laws of Allah. And if we quickly zoom out of Surah Al-Hadid, this is a surah that was revealed after the Hijrah in the time of Medina, in the middle years of Medina. But in the Mus'haf, in our Quran, in the order, it has one entire juz of Makkan Quran about reminding people to believe, and the entire following juz is Medinan Quran about community, laws, regulations. But this surah Hadid is right in the middle. It was revealed in Medina. It was revealed in the time of Medina, but the vibes, the messages, the flow is all like that of what's come in Makkan Quran. It is the Makkan wake-up call for the believers in the time of Medina. It's possible that Allah sent this surah as a wake-up call for the believers, a flashback to the energy, the spirit, the vibe, the utter flow of Makkan Iman. And currently the believers, they could have been facing a lack in motivation. The battles of Badr and Uhud have passed. Things may be a bit more calm. There may be some hypocrites. So that Makkan vibe, that high of Iman was fading. And so this was here to reinstill, reinvigorate that Iman inside of them. Hadid comes as that reminder, that wake-up call. Come back to your faith that was there in Mecca, that full Iman. And never forget why Allah is trying to wake you up. Why is Allah trying to wake me up? Why is Allah shaking me? He wants me to connect with the Quran for my benefit, for your salvation, for our success. In the next ayah, it's as if Allah changes the topic, but there was no change in topic at all. اعلموا أن الله يحيي الأرض بعد موتها. No, don't forget that it is actually Allah who gives the earth back to life, who brings the earth back to life, who gives the earth life after it was dead. قَدْ بَيَّنَّا لَكُمُ الْآيَاتِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. We have already given and explained the signs to all of you so that you think. The creator of the earth, the creator of humans, the creator of my heart, of your heart, can bring back the dead, barren, dry, lifeless earth back to life. Don't you think he can bring your heart back to life? Your heart, my heart, could have become so hard as a rock that it becomes dead, lifeless. Allah can bring anything back to life. He can bring my heart back to life. He can bring anything back to life. It is through Allah's remembrance, the dhikr of Allah, His book, His words, His guidance, submitting to His reminders. Through that, we revive, reawaken, and bring our hearts back to life through His grace. Believers, wake up, revive your hearts, revive your minds, revive your bodies, revive your souls. The only way to do so is through this book, connecting to this book, submitting, humbling, softening, falling apart at this book. May Allah make us people who our hearts have khushu', they are humble, they are soft, they crumble, they humbly submit and obey to this book. Ameen. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين اللهم اجعلنا منهم. Allah, we end by asking you to bless and protect our beloved Prophet and Messenger and include us from those who follow his way until the end of time. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.